Hello, my friends, and welcome to another episode of the Million Pound Mission Podcast. It's your buddy Adam, the PhD, the previously heavy dude, and this is episode number 274. We're doing Q&A with my girl, Alexa Schirm. I'm super excited to bring this one to you. I think you're going to get a lot out of it. I think you're going to really love it. But first, let's catch up a little bit. We got a few things coming up. I just got back from my event in Huntington Beach, California. I'm sure that has gone amazingly well. And then we're getting ready for the next event, which Alexa will actually be speaking at here in October in Bloomington on October 19th. We still got some tickets available for that if you want to grab one at millionpoundmission.com. So if you enjoy this interaction with Alexa, she's been on the show before. She's one of my favorite people. I think that she really has important things to say. So if you want to interact with her live, plan on being at the old Million Pound Mission live workshop here in Bloomington, Indiana, in the Midwest. We need more things like this in the Midwest, right? All the healthy stuff is in the South and the East and the West Coast out in California. And, you know, I'm walking around the grocery here in Bloomington. It's like, where can I get something organic? Is there an apple somewhere? And so I'm leading the charge to healthify the Midwest. Hashtag healthify. The other thing we got coming up here next week, I'm launching registration for my Transformation ReBoot membership program. We're only doing that enrollment once per quarter. You guys can do a free 10-day trial to test it out. So this interaction that you're seeing here today is I brought Alexa into my community to do a small group chat with my ReBoot members. And they get to do this live Q&A. And we're doing this on a monthly basis. And that's something that I really get fired up about, right? I really enjoy leveraging my podcasting connections. I'm getting to talk to some amazing people that I normally would have never had access to. And I like to connect you guys to these experts so that you can get face-to-face or video chat and actually ask them questions and get direct advice back from them. So if that's something that you think would be kind of cool, that's just one amazing part of that Transformation ReBoot membership. And again, we'll be unlocking the doors, releasing the Kraken next Monday. You'll be able to go to millionpoundmission.com, start a free 10-day trial, try it out, see what you think, and hopefully join our ranks in the Transformation ReBoot community. So like I mentioned, this is one of the things I love to do with my community. Once per month, we do a deep dive Q&A. This episode, we focused on Alexa. And if you don't know who Alexa is, again, one of my favorite people, one of my favorite podcasts to listen to. She hosts the Simple Roots radio podcast. She's a former gym owner. She's a nutritionist, and she loves to create new recipes using real ingredients and then show us how these can impact our health. The thing I love about Alexa is that she delivers actionable advice and gives us the science to back it up. She's another one of those deep diver, researcher type mindset people that I love to have on the show and get you guys in front of. Now, a few highlights of the Q&A. This is really good. Like, we've done a lot of these, and people just went nuts about this interaction with Alexa inside the community. We talk about female health. We talk about hormone balance. We talk about getting out of our own way, getting out of our own head, intermittent fasting. And this is, I never thought I would say something like this publicly on my show, but one of the top highlights was a magical menstrual cycle tip that our group now refers to as Alexa's period protocol. Honestly, this has been a breakthrough for so many of my female group members. I couldn't wait to share this with everybody, all the females out there, and people who have females in their lives that really struggle with menstrual cycle, weight gain, bloating, things like that. My community members are implementing this advice, this simple protocol, and it is a game changer for them. So I think that may be your highlight as well. So the magical menstrual cycle tip, Alexa's period protocol. All right, so let's just dive into this sucker. Again, this is live Q&A, so it's not like the ultimate audio experience. My clients don't have professional podcasting microphones and things like that, but I think it is the juice is worth the squeeze on this one. Let's just put it that way. I think we get some great interaction, and Alexa just delivers as always. She over-delivers as always. So without further ado, let's get into episode 274, a little deep dive Q&A session with my girl, Alexa Schirm. All right, friends, this is our monthly deep dive in our Transformation ReBoot program. And we have a special guest with us, one of our favorite podcasters out there, Alexa Schirm from Simple Roots. And I'm super excited. So we've got a bunch of our members here ready to ask questions. We look like the Brady Bunch on the screen. And I'm going to turn it over and let you guys fire away with Alexa. Now, if you guys have a question, type it in the chat. If you aren't sure how to use the chat, then wave your arms like this when it's time to ask another question. All right. So Robin, I'm going to unmute you, and then you can fire away with Alexa. All right, Robin, you are on.
Hey.
What question do you have for Alexa?
Hi, Alexa.
Hi, Robin.
I've been listening to a lot of your podcasts, and I actually bought your hormone reboot system. But I have this mental problem where I just don't like to think about food and planning food. And I've been listening to a lot of your mental series too. They've been very helpful. Thank you. But do you have any suggestions on how I can get over that, especially when it's something that I need to do that is going to be beneficial for me?
Yeah, I'm really passionate about this, and it's a really great question because I feel like probably everyone here struggles with it. Like even from time to time, every other week, maybe I find myself questioning the same thing. Like, I don't want to do all of this work that it takes to be healthy. But I think, honestly, the more that I dive into the mental, the mental aspect of just being disciplined and living healthy, what I found is it's just that. Like, it's a discipline that isn't always fun, but it's definitely something that, by the way, are you at the beach?
She is.
I
Oh
am.
my gosh. I looked at the back. I was like, oh my gosh, you're at the beach. You're in heaven. No wonder you don't want a meal, please.
Yeah.
I'm at Amelia Island in North Florida.
Oh my gosh.
We came up here for a wedding this weekend.
It looks gorgeous there. But I really, like, to go back to your question, I really do think it's just a discipline of, it doesn't have to consume you. And I think we overthink it a lot of the times. You know, for me, it's just basically getting into a routine of, this is my summer breakfast routine. And there's like two things. And I just go back and forth between those two things. Like having just, like, I'm very big into seasonality, but within that season, I repeat a lot of the same foods. So if we can get ourselves into this consistent habit of, like, these are the breakfast foods that I like to eat, I'm just going to have those at home on hand so I can eat them. Lunch tends to be the same thing for me. Like, they're not big, extravagant meals. And I feel like what has happened with Pinterest and a million food bloggers, and nothing against that, but it seems like everything has become more and more complex. Really, it just goes back to the basics. What can I eat that's healthy, that I enjoy, and it's easy? I rarely am cooking a full meal from scratch. A lot of the times I'm like, how can I use Trader Joe's cauliflower gnocchi in a recipe this week? Or, you know, like, I'm trying to pull in other things that make healthy eating simple, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes even like my 5-day hormonal reset, that's a little above and beyond because there's specific foods in there. Not that you have to eat them, but when you do something like that, it's very specific to the process, and those foods matter in a way. So like a week like that is going to be more intense or take more time. But outside of that, we should be getting ourselves into these rhythms that you can wake up and have, and it's not like another decision you have to make, if that makes sense. Like, it just becomes who you are. Like, I really want this to transform into who you are. So a good place to start is to pick 3, maybe 4 healthy breakfast options that you like, that are healthy, write them down, and then just every week, you just pick 2 of those. So like this week, I'm going back and forth between, I'm kind of like into smoothies and avocado toast right now. So I'll probably have that one day, and another day it might be a yogurt bowl or just a hash or something like that. Like don't overthink it, I guess is what I'm saying. Like it doesn't have to confine us like the world makes it.
Yeah. I just get overwhelmed. It is, but I just kind of get overwhelmed sometimes when I just have to, just like when I started Adam's program with the food, I'd had the plan for a couple of months before I ever even, starting the ReBoot program, like, kicked me into gear to say, okay, you got to do it now because you're in this group.
Yeah.
So after I brought it with me on vacation, but I've read through everything. I need to implement it. So I've just got to make myself
it's a
sit down and make the plan out for the 5 days.
Yeah.
So I just have to make myself do it.
Right. I think too, like outside of that plan, like just pick one thing. Like that's what I tell people. Pick one thing that you can do in that day, because a lot of times one thing will lead to another thing, so like for me, my most important thing, like I don't often focus heavily on supper time, which I feel like is the opposite of what a lot of people do. Like we think we have to make these meals. I'm focusing on breakfast because I know for me, how I start my day is often how the rest of my day goes. So if I don't make a wise choice in the morning, like if I wake up and all I can find is a bowl of cereal, or I'm eating on the go, like for me, that's just this, it starts my day in chaos, and my day it's funny how it works. It will end in chaos. I never really catch up. So right now this summer, I feel like I was living in chaos. And so my goal this week, my one thing this week is that I'm going to focus on sitting down and having a healthy breakfast. I'm not worried about what's going to happen the rest of the day, because I know that one thing is going to make a difference in how the rest of my day goes. So I would say for you is to help you get into this discipline is to pick what's your one thing going to be that you're going to focus on this week. Do that one thing and don't worry about the rest, and just kind of let it happen. And I think sometimes when we take away a lot of those other decisions we have to make, we're not as fatigued. Like there is a real thing like willpower where we become decision fatigued. I know this, we've studied this. And so the more that we have to make these like crazy decisions all day long, it's exhausting and it makes you not want to do anything. I think the one way to get discipline back so that becomes something that you just do is simply to take away the decision of it. Like to not worry about what's going to happen except for that one thing you're going to do. And I think you'll be amazed at how everything else kind of falls into place. So my goal for you would be to pick one thing, whether it's a meal, whether it's what you do first thing when you wake up. It can be multiple different things. But since we're talking about food, I would say pick one meal that you tend to know changes the course of your day, that makes you feel good, that gives you energy. I would say for the majority of people, it's breakfast. What's that one thing that you can do to make that meal work for you? And don't worry about the other. Does that help?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Thank you.
Try it out and see how it goes, and then you can just kind of mold and shape from there. I know there are other seasons in my life where I get busy at nighttime and I have to kind of go back to focusing on nighttime meals. Otherwise, we're trying to grab food out or whatever. For me, in this season right now, I feel like with having the kids home from school, our routines off, I just have to get back to my one thing of sitting down and eating a breakfast. Yep. And everything else, I'm just kind of like, I don't know what lunch is going to look like. Well, we're going to deal with that when it comes, but not trying to be so consumed by this week-long process when we can just pick one thing every single day and just kind of let the rest work itself out.
Yep. It's like that domino, we talk about lining up dominoes, and what's the first one you need to flick over each day? And that's the one thing that we focus on doing. So, all right, let's see here. Mandy, we're going to pull Mandy in. Get ready. Now, Mandy's she said yes to the dress and her future husband. So she's getting ready for a wedding here.
Wow. Congratulations.
Yeah. Mandy's an amazing young lady. She's lost over 100 pounds. She's been one of my friends and clients for a long time. So she's got it going on, but you got a question. Fire away, Mandy.
Yeah. Well, some of my background is I started with Adam in 2013 and I lost over 100 pounds that year, and I've kept it off mostly. So I say that because I've been tracking my weight for that long. So I kind of know, what I can get away with, or like how to get right back down, to my comfort zone. But since like January, which it might be TMI for everybody. Adam already knows my menstrual cycle stuff, but I've been tracking my weight, so I think it can trace it back to my period. Like the week after my period, I put on like 5 or 6 pounds, like in that week. My food doesn't change though. Like I'm still eating healthy. So it's like super demotivating. I just feel awful that whole week, and it's the week after. And then like within the next week, I'm feeling fine again. And so I'm like super frustrated, and I don't know what else to pin it down to. So I didn't know if you had any thoughts on that.
So to the week after you get your period, every single time, that's where you're seeing weight gain?
Yeah. By like 5 to 6 pounds at least.
Okay.
So it's a substantial amount.
So this is like this period, this big transition where I would say that the most hormonal imbalance I see is that transition from when we have our period into that new follicular phase that we have going on. And what we know about that phase is that's actually the time to be the most active, but it's also the time to eat the least amount of food.
Okay.
So you're gonna notice as your phases progress, right? Like right before you get your menstrual cycle or your menses, is you're going to be hungry, right? Mm-hmm. That third phase, or it depends on where you start, but that's really where we should eat more food as it progresses into that healing phase. But once like day 2 is out, day 1 of your period, you're going to want to rest more, be more low key, but really your body should have enough in it. So I would say that is the period where we see people needing to work out harder, a little bit more, and to focus on eating a little bit less, or at least less carbs. And I'm not a big person to like count anything, like as you guys know who've listened to me, or do any of that, but it is a really big time that 1 week period in there. A lot of people see weight gain, and they also see a lot of mood swings. So some people want to relate it back to PMS, but you should actually see more of that happening then if you're out of balance. So to get yourself back in balance, I would say that's the week to focus on more protein, more vegetables, definitely, and working out harder. So I assume you're working out, but like that's the week when you should you actually have, it's actually testosterone and this estrogen thing that's going on. Mm-hmm. So you actually have more testosterone during that time. So you should have more energy to work out. If that energy is not being burned, then it's often being stored. Okay. So I would say be more active, focus more on, vegetables and protein sources, and a little bit lighter on the carbohydrate. So for breakfast, if you are having avocado toast, that's the week that I would change that out and make it some form of protein and higher in fat. Okay.
That's the week before you said, or?
No, that's the week after, the week that you feel like you're gaining the weight and you don't feel as well. It's also a great week to do more fasting. So you could shorten your fasting window. So you eat your calories. Maybe you get rid of breakfast or supper, not to get rid of a mass amount of calories and go into starvation or whatever. Yeah. But it is a great time where you just need to see this burn in energy. Mm-hmm. Your body needs to get rid of it. And if we're not getting rid of it, that's where we can start to feel more sluggish. Okay. So kind of I call that week the cleanest eating week that we have, as it after we ovulate, then we're going to start to see our need for carbohydrates go up. We tend to want to work out a little bit less because our body's really preparing for this mass change that's going to happen. But those first 2 weeks after your period, those are the prime time to actually see weight loss if you do it well. Okay. So you can actually start I feel like those are the weeks that are make it or break it. The other 2 weeks, that's kind of where our body's going to hold out. Mm-hmm. So you won't see a lot of change in those other 2 weeks. It's in those first 2 weeks that you're going to see the most change if you do it well. Okay. So those are weeks, like I said, work out harder, do more intense activity. Those are great weeks for HIIT training, or if you're running any kind of cardio, add some strength training. But then, like I said, shorten your window, your eating window, and eat a little bit less. You should find if you do this, you actually are less hungry in those first 2 weeks than you are in the second 2 weeks. Okay. So it's just an energy burn kind of thing. Yeah. So those are some things that you could do to help fix that. Okay. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. And just one other thing, I saw your hormonal thing too on your website. Mm-hmm. Do you think it would be beneficial to try to do that the week after my period? And do you think
yeah, that's a great time to do it. Okay. Definitely after. That's usually the time I recommend it, is the week after you have your period. Okay. The super clean eating, kind of getting stuff back on track. Mm-hmm. And then, you can go into it. Although I think during the 5-day hormonal reset, I say not to do a ton of exercise. I feel like if you do it that first week, you could add a lot more exercise into that. Okay, cool. But there's definitely, something going on with the imbalance of trying to re-regulate that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But you could fix that. So, yeah.
Cool. All right. Thank you.
Good.
Yeah.
Does that help, Mandy?
Yes. Thanks.
She asked me this question, the same question on Tuesday night. I'm like, let's put a pin in this. I'm feeling Alexa will be able to answer this a lot better than me. And I'm glad that you told her that she can exercise more, because you never tell Mandy that she can't exercise. She loves her some exercise. So.
Oh, yeah.
Pull me out of classes.
Yeah, but another thing that could be throwing you off, if you love exercise, if you're not slowing down when you start menstruating, that's a huge stress for the body. And so when you do, like, I feel like a few days before and like once you get it, like day 1 and day 2, maybe even day 3, those are days you really want to slow down. And if you're not slowing down, we're going to see this massive spike in cortisol. Because it is really hard for your body to do all that. So I really like people to slow down, get more rest. And as your period goes on, you just kind of progressively, I guess, you should be less and less hungry, maybe shortening that window, and then you can start speeding it up. So an app that I like, I don't know if you guys track it via an app or anything, but it's called MyFlow. Have you ever heard of it?
No, I just put it in my calendar, like, started.
Okay. This might be something worth getting. I don't know if you can see it, but MyFlow, and inside it's going to tell you what week you're in.
Oh, okay.
And it can actually give you inside. It's really cool because it'll give you like what week you're in, what are some good foods, how is your activity level. And then it really helps you do the cycle syncing stuff, because I think a lot of people, this is the difference between men and women, is men can really get away with doing the same thing all the time and see great change. Women, we have to be very concerned about where we are in our cycle, because like I said, if we're not slowing down in the right times, we will see this retention in fluid and retention in fat, just simply because we're pushing our body to an extreme that it's not meant to. Yeah. And so you want to work with that. So I would recommend, I think this is like $1.99, but it's totally worth it. And then you can see how long your cycle is. They just have a lot of information. I haven't really looked into it too much, but it's pretty cool.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense too, because I was telling Adam, I think I might have been overtraining again, which he's gotten on to me about before. So
yeah, overtraining is one of the best ways to gain weight. It's so frustrating, right? Because you're putting in all that work, but it's doing the right exercise in the right time. So doing the first 2 weeks is always high intensity. The second 2 weeks is always slowing, especially that last week is really slowing down, doing a lot more like Pilates or walking. I really try to stay away from HIIT or anything like that. And in your head, it doesn't make sense, but for your body, it is a safety mechanism. Remember, like, women's bodies are meant to reproduce, and we have to have a certain percentage of body fat in order to do that. And so our body is always going to be inclined to maintain extra weight as opposed to being underweight. Like, it's safer to be overweight. And so if it feels threatened, I always say if your body's threatened, that's when it gains weight. So what's making it feel threatened, that it needs to hold on to weight or gain more weight? And that's a good way to look at it, is like, what have I done in the past that's making my body feel threatened? Like, when does this start? What have I been doing to my body that's making it want to start retaining weight gain again? And then you can start to make those changes for it.
Okay.
And if you start doing the cycle syncing stuff, you're going to start to pick up on your energy levels, and you might start to notice, okay, even like, my tendency is to overtrain, and I've been here before, and to push my body, like no pain, no gain, right? Like that's the opposite of exactly what we want to do. Is when you start to feel pain or when you're really fatigued, that's when you really need to slow down, because that's a warning signal from your body.
Okay.
To like really back off, especially if you're really, if you're trying to maintain, congratulations on the 100 pounds, but you want to maintain that, right? And so we got to be very careful about those warning signals, because your body still is going to have a tendency to want to creep back, to creep back up, especially for the first few years afterwards. So keeping that awareness and really kind of not overtraining is going to be good. And that's hard. Like, I used to own a gym too, and I could push people a lot, and myself, and I crashed and burned too. And so it's a big wake up call. But yeah, so I would do that, kind of try and do I guess, cycle sync. And I think I have some downloads on my website that help you with the cycle syncing stuff. Okay. And then I would definitely check out MyFlow, the app. Yeah. It's really worth it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yes, definitely.
Good question, Mandy. All right, Tamar from the Great White North up in Canada. All right, Tamar, fire away with your question.
Hey, Alexa.
Hi.
I love your podcast, and I've been listening to a lot of them on anxiety lately, because I've got a lot of life changes going on right now. But probably about 10 years ago, I suffered really bad from depression and anxiety, and part of it had to do with I was living in the world of addiction. Mm-hmm. I'm 7 years sober now, And so for me, I can stay away from a drink, no problem. I do the things I need to do on a daily basis, but I find that, sometimes that anxiety with work and stuff and other life things that go on, I reach for food, right? And I really, it's a kind of a fine line for me. If I have that sweet, it can go completely sideways for the rest of the week. So I guess, how I manage kind of my anxiety with those life changes, work stress, and not letting it turn into something that, I have to eat. It's not like I can avoid eating.
Yeah. Yeah. I think this is a great question. And it's one I've been thinking about a lot and studying about a lot. And I feel like I kind of always go status quo. Like I go against what everyone else is saying sometimes, which is good and bad. But I look at our need to control anxiety right now. And I think what I'm coming to learn is that we've made anxiety bad. And I'm not saying that it's good, but I feel like there's a level of anxiety that is just an awareness tool to our body. And so I think sometimes what we get ourselves into is this anxiety about the anxiety, which is actually the bad kind of anxiety that makes us go to this other form of power to fill us back up, right? Like we're just transmitting our power from ourselves, from our mind into food. Like we think food's going to give us what we're looking for, at least a temporary comfort, when we all know it doesn't. Like we all know food isn't the answer. We all know that other drugs aren't the answer, but so often we go there. And I think one, it's just the world that's telling us that anxiety is really bad. And so I'm kind of questioning this idea of what if those things that we thought were bad actually aren't bad at all? Like what if they're actually there to help us? So I think if you start looking at anxiety as a tool that your body's giving you to help realize that I'm tired, I'm wearing out. It's kind of like an alarm system.
Yeah.
And instead of going for this, oh my gosh, I'm having anxiety, like what the world thinks that we have anxiety, that we need this quick fix, this temporary fill. Instead, we can look at it as a means of, okay, I'm feeling stressed. This anxiety isn't bad. This is helping me. How can I give my body what it needs in this moment? And so I kind of have started creating like just little habits, like again, just one thing that you can do when anxiety hits to make your body aware that you are aware. You know what I'm saying? Like I think sometimes anxiety spirals out of control because we never really voice what we're actually concerned about. And so our body just keeps going with it and keeps going with it because it's worried we're never going to wake up to the fact that this is going on. And so what's one thing? So I have I feel like the more I've gone through this anxiety summit, the more I feel like I have anxiety.
Yeah.
But I'm starting to do okay, what's one thing that I can do? Like, I know I'm having a stressful day. This is a bad day. So instead of coming home and thinking I have to cook a meal, maybe that's the time that we go out to eat, I just take a pressure off. And I know the nutritionist is telling us to go out to eat, but hey, sometimes the mindset that we have around what we're eating is worse than any food that we could ever put in our body. So maybe for me, it's okay, kids, I'm not cooking tonight. It's been a rough day and we're just going to go out to eat. But I've created that awareness that food isn't going to fill me up, but how can I de-stress around the food that I eat, if that makes sense? Yeah, so it could be instead of coming home and doing laundry, the laundry's always there. Can I go out for a walk? Can I get some sunshine? What's one thing you can do in the next 5 minutes even that can help make your body aware of the fact that you are very aware that things are going south or that my anxiety is spiraling out of control. And I think voicing that makes it lose its power, and it makes you stop looking for a power in another source that will never fill you up. Yeah. So I really think that maybe and I think this for me, I'm preaching this to myself as well, is what if we stop looking at as anxiety as bad? Can I just tell you a statistic for a second? So anxiety medication was created 2 years before anxiety, the term, ever came on the market. So there's this thought, isn't this crazy? Adam, I'm looking at you. Isn't this crazy?
Yeah.
Anxiety medication. They created a medication to calm us down before the term anxiety was ever known. So some people want to believe that we created a drug and then we created a problem to fulfill the drug. Now, of course, there's always controversy there, but when I was kind of reading some of this, I was going back to see when some like anxiety started. Like, that's my thing. Like, when did anxiety start? Like, when did we actually coin this as a problem? And so some people believe, well, we always had anxiety. We never had anxiety to the level that we now believe because we've made it a problem. We've been taught to fixate on the problem when maybe it's not the problem at all. You know, maybe I feel like, oh my gosh, she got me on a soapbox. I feel like maybe we don't need fixed as much as we've been told we need to be fixed. Like, maybe we're pretty good the way that we are, and we just need to start honoring and loving that about ourselves instead of always looking for the fix. Because what I'm wondering is, if we live in this, I have anxiety, I need to fix it, then I feel like we're like kind of living in this deficit all the time. And the fix only ever gets us back to empty. It never fills us up. But what if we never have a problem to begin with? Like, what if we're pretty cool to start with? Like, yeah, we might have anxiety or problems from time to time, but that never pushes us into a deficit. Like, we're always doing things to fill ourselves up rather than just climbing out of the hole. Because I feel like if I look around, and even for myself, I feel like we're just like grasping to get out of this hole, when really maybe we've self-created a hole that was never intended to be there anyways. So for everyone here, my challenge is, because I'm doing this too, like, this is new thoughts that I haven't put out there, that maybe we're not broken people, but maybe instead of looking at ourselves as, oh my gosh, I have anxiety, or I have this problem, even when it comes to weight too, of like, okay, here I am, right? It's not good or bad necessarily. Here I am. What can I do to fill myself up? What can I do to honor myself, to love myself, to respect myself? Because I think it's there in that mindset that we can then start to realize, okay, all these things that I've been doing because I've been anxious actually aren't doing anything but keeping me in this hole that I've created for myself and the world's told me to create. And instead, what can I do? Can I go outside for 5 minutes? Can I wake up? You know, like, I feel like if I've had an anxious day, one thing I know that I should do is actually wake up earlier the next day to have more time for myself, which I feel like is the opposite of what the world tells us. You need more sleep. You know, you need to relax more and rest more. For me, what I found is, no, when I'm anxious, the worst thing for me is to lay in bed and think about it. The best thing I can do is to wake up 30 minutes earlier and go outside for a walk, and then have some time to read or just to rest, like just having space to do something rather than space to just be concerned about my anxiety. Does that make sense? I'm ranting. I don't have any of these thoughts put together. So I feel like this is like just me going off a whim here.
Breaking news with Alexa. I like it.
I like literally like the whole week I was on vacation. This is all I've been thinking about. My husband's tired of me talking to him about it. So this is probably good that I'm releasing on you.
You've got an outlet. Now, I think anxiety, like when we were cave people, we see a saber-toothed tiger, we get anxious. Like, it's that natural alarm system, like Alexa said, where it's built in for a reason. Mm-hmm. And then we have that fight or flight or that response. And the same thing is happening of there's like tomorrow's considering some new work opportunities, and there may be that anxiety alarm might go off, but that just means it's time to make a decision. And you're brushing up against comfort zones. There's a little bit of fear, but it doesn't mean that something's wrong with us. So yeah.
And I think anxiety can come in a lot of different forms. Sometimes I think anxiety comes from boredom. Like, we've just been repeating the same thing. And I think we discredit how much our body loves adventure and risk. And I think that we're the only, like, we're coming into this world where everything is self-regulated. Like, even in our houses, when I talk about seasonality of food and things, we live in climate controlled environments. We can do the same thing all the time without ever having a risk. You know, like, we don't have to go outside when it's negative 30. I mean, we probably shouldn't for a long time, you know, at negative 30, but to like, maybe like for me, what I know is that I feel like the more we stay inside of ourselves, the worse my anxiety gets. And I think that in this world of self-care, which I think is great, don't discount that, but I think it's told us to go back to ourselves. But I think that there's a whole level of like we're looking for something to fix us inside of ourselves, when I think we have to get out. Like, what can we do to take the risk, to take the adventure, to go out with other people, to be relational? Like, I think that there's a whole nother aspect. And I think once we come inside, then we get bored, you know, like, oh, like, what is here? So we reach for food and we reach for other comforts that really aren't going to fill us up, rather than just kind of getting our mind away from ourselves and onto other things. I think that could be good. And that's why like what's one thing again, and I kind of just have written down, I started just by writing things down that were like my one thing. Okay, I'm going to go outside for 5 minutes. I'm going to walk around my house. I'm going to text a friend. You know, like I have just a few things that I have when anxiety hits, because it's an awareness tool. Can then if I take that space to go outside to talk to a friend, can I voice what it is and then make sense of it? You know what I'm saying? As opposed to just knowing I have anxiety, but not really knowing where it's coming from or what it's doing. And that just leads to me looking for fulfillment in food, because food was never intended to be, and it's supposed to be pleasurable and relational, but it's not supposed to be the comfort of pleasure that we provide for it. Mm-hmm. Or that we try to look for it in. Like, we give food way more power than it was ever designed to have. So what are some things that you could do? So I would encourage you to make a list of like 4 or 5 things. And it's not that you have to have that list with you, but I think the more that you recognize, here's one little thing that I could do. Here's my routine, or things that I'm going to establish in place for when I know I'm having a really anxiety producing day, like things are just going chaotic, and start doing them. Like, I know, like, okay, I'm going to get outside in some sun because I love being outside, or I'm going to just shut things down for a while and read a good book. But the biggest thing that has changed me is knowing, okay, I've had a bad day and I know that I just need a snack and to sleep. And then the next day, waking up and starting the day, not just like sluggish, but I'm going to start my day off and I'm going to do something. So those are some things. And I just went on like a 20-minute rant. So
it's good. That's why I brought you on here, Alexa.
Yeah. But I will go along with you and say that every species has anxiety. Like, we can look at every species and recognize that there's a percentage of their population who would have more anxiety characteristics or traits, and it's their survival mechanism. Like, if we all didn't have anxiety, we could never perceive a threat. And did you know that they've studied presidents, and presidents who had more anxiety or mental health problems were actually the best leaders, because they could perceive threats and deal with threats faster than a president who didn't have any. And they actually didn't perform as well in power because they couldn't perceive the threats, or they couldn't distinguish how threatening they were to our society like other presidents were. So they were actually saying that we should, that people in power are actually more powerful with mental health problems than without.
Cool.
Crazy.
That could go that whole pipeline right now.
I know, right? Right? But it's the perception of threats. Like monkeys, there's a percentage of monkeys who will sit on the boundaries of their territory and watch for predators. Without that, could they be extinct? You know, like when they take these anxiety-ridden animals out of the population, they just get ran over. You know, like they're just gone in an instant. Like, they're actually studying this stuff to again show that maybe anxiety isn't bad, and maybe trying to reduce that is actually doing more harm to our society than it is good.
Interesting.
So I like to tell my husband, I'm just saving our lives here.
Yes, just saving us here.
Yeah.
All right, let's see here. We got Janet, you're up next, and then Lindsay, and then we could probably maybe do one more quick one after that. So if you have a quick question, type a comment in the chat box and we'll get to you. So Janet, then Lindsay, and then maybe one more. All right, Janet, fire away.
Alexa, I love your podcast.
Oh, thank you.
I love it. Especially the mindset one. What you're doing this summer, it's amazing. Love it.
Thank you.
My biggest question is sleep. And Adam and I have talked about this several times. It's like I fall asleep really easily, but I can't stay asleep. Mm-hmm. I am on go all the time throughout the day. So it's nothing for me to work an 18-hour day, 7 days a week. Mm-hmm. So when I do try to get sleep, I've got to be able to sleep, and I can't. Mm-hmm. So what am I doing wrong?
Well, there is some people who do have a harder time sleeping, and some people who just don't need as much sleep. But I would say 6 hours is great for anyone. Like, I really like to see 6 hours as my minimum. So of course you're probably sleeping in a dark room. I mean, you've probably gone through all the basics, even sleeping with an eye mask, sleeping in cooler environments, having white noise, all those things. Sometimes with people like you, I'll maybe push what time do you go to bed?
I try to be in bed by 9. It doesn't always work that way, but I try. 10 o'clock at the latest.
And then what time do you wake up?
At 2 a.m. I cannot
so
sleep.
You go to sleep well. You go to sleep well, but then you wake up at 2 and then you're pretty much awake.
And it's like 2 a.m.'s like the bewitching hour. It's like I can't sleep past 2 a.m.
Yeah. So the good news is in that scheme is that our deepest sleep is from the hours of 12 to 2.
I know Adam was talking about that too. Yeah.
So you're getting what they would consider the restorative sleep. Are you feeling tired throughout the day, or are you doing pretty good?
Towards the mid afternoon, I get tired because I'm go. So yeah.
Have you ever tried to move your sleeping window and say you go to bed at like 10:30 or 11 instead of?
I can go to bed at midnight and still wake up at 2.
Oh, so it doesn't matter what time you go to bed.
No.
You've just set that 2 o'clock.
Yep.
Have you used any supplements to help yourself sleep, like magnesium or?
I've tried magnesium. I've tried melatonin. I've tried all of them. And again, I can go to sleep, not a problem, but I wake up at 2.
You wake up at 2. So you have like this strong internal clock that's making you wake up every single day at 2 o'clock. So I would say that for a week, I would push back your sleeping window. So instead of going to bed at like 9, try 9:30. Or just if you say 10, go to bed at 10 and you might wake up at 2. But what it should do is eventually your body's going to catch up to that and you should start sleeping a little bit longer and just slowly start to push your time back, because you're probably like right now you're only getting 4 hours. But if we could get you beyond that 2 o'clock point, like if we could change your circadian clock enough to just make it realize that 2 o'clock is not okay, that we could slowly push it out and maybe get you to sleep till 4. Does that make sense? But I think it's going to take going to bed a little bit later and wait to make yourself wake up a little bit. What I'm saying is I think you're going to have to sleep deprive a little bit in order for your clock to want to sleep in longer.
Okay.
It doesn't make sense initially, but doing it a little bit at a time, it takes roughly 7 days to change your circadian clock by 10 minutes. So it's taking some time, but you should start to see hopefully just in going to bed by 10, and maybe the next week you go to bed at 10:15 and then 10:30, maybe even pushing yourself to 10:45. And my goal for you would be to sleep till 4.
Okay. Well, 4 is going to be hard because I usually try and be up by 3 just to get my day started.
Holy moly. Could you sleep till 4?
If I can just sleep till 3, I'd be happy.
You'd be happy. Okay. Well then, I would really try to get that 6 hours, like trying to go for 6 hours, which is hard when you wake up at that time.
Right.
But if you want to change your circadian clock, you kind of have to sleep deprive in order to get your body to want to sleep, because eventually we'll all make up sleep if given the option. So it should start to, and then just be consistent with that.
Okay. All right.
But what are your thoughts on making it at 2 long enough that you can't?
Right. What are your thoughts on cortisol?
Your cortisol. Have you had your cortisol tested?
No, but I just feel like I'm always on. And I think that's probably one of the main reasons why I can't lose weight, is because I eat clean. I eat clean. I eat probably fewer calories than I probably should most days because I'm so busy, but the weight's just stays. It doesn't, I don't gain weight, but I don't lose weight.
Yeah, it's probably because you're always in fight or flight response. You're never in sympathetic mode. So you're never in parasympathetic mode. You're always in this fight or flight. So you're never in rest and digest. So what do you do when you wake up? Do you go to work?
I usually get up and work. I work a lot. So I work in the mornings from home, and then I go to work, and then I come home and I work again.
And so is it all required or is it extra?
I have 3 businesses plus I work a 40-hour.
Oh my goodness.
So I work a lot.
I will tell you, I just talked to someone the other day. My neighbor came over because she was struggling with the same thing. I feel like as a nutritionist, and Adam probably feels the same way, if work stress is involved, we will never win. Just over, work rules. And so unfortunately, usually whenever we see work stress, just like life stress, but what I've noticed, and I don't know if Adam's noticed this too, I feel like life stress, like with a death in the family or something big like that happens, a lot of times I see weight loss, but work stress, it's always weight gain. There's something so prolonged about work stress that it's impossible, because it's messed with cortisol for so long that it will be impossible to lose weight as long as the work stress continues. So in order to sleep more too, you're probably going to have to, at some point, decide like work or, kind of that. Like, I don't want to put it there, but I don't think that Adam or I ever will find a magic here, especially when we see things like magnesium or melatonin or valerian not working. For anyone who's who doesn't have, like, obviously whenever cortisol is present, melatonin will never come into the picture. Right. So we'll never be able to sleep. And no matter how much melatonin you take, if cortisol is there, it's not going to work. Like, we can't override the cortisol system. So in order to see weight loss, I really have to, at some point, like with my neighbor, I'm like, man, like at some point you're going to have to choose work hours or weight loss. Like, it can't be both for most people. And that's just, it's an unfortunate reality. But when we see ourselves pushing our bodies, like, I feel like we're just living at this fast paced rate that our bodies were just never designed to live at. And I think, like, again, another reason I love the seasonality of things is, like, the shorter days used to mean that we would make up for all these longer days in the summertime. But now we just work all the time, 24/7, every day of the year. And literally I have never succeeded at helping someone to lose the weight that they wanted to when work stress is involved.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I feel like that's like the bearer of bad news, but I think for anyone across the board, stress is so powerful and so damaging to our bodies that it's a survival mechanism. If it went away, you wouldn't survive. You know, like, it is there for purpose, for a reason, to keep you living and to keep you doing this. But if we can't shut ourselves off, we are also not healing and restoring ourselves. And sleep is a huge indicator of that. And so, yeah, we have to learn to shut ourselves off. And sometimes that means making hard decisions. You know, like I talked to my neighbor, I'm like, man, you can keep working 80 hours a week. Like, that's not my decision to make. It's yours, but I have never found anyone to be successful long-term at beating work stress.
Got it.
No.
It's tough. It's tough. I don't know if you have, Adam, but I fail every single time.
I mean, that's how I worked myself into the hospital 3 different times, you know, just adding more and more and more. And then I started focusing more on effective, like, how can I be most impactful? How can I be most effective? And now, like, after we do our chat today, I'm going to put up my first post on Instagram where you guys know that I track my free days every month, how many days I do work free. I'm going to start putting that out there, on Instagram, how many each quarter, how like, my goal is to always do over 100, 120 each year of no work email, no work anything. That's like the opposite of the hustle entrepreneurial, you know, mantra that's being pushed out there. And a lot of entrepreneurs, like John Lee Dumas is a big podcaster. On his website, he posts how much money he makes every month. And I'm going to post how many free days I take each month.
That's awesome.
That's my form of compensation. So something to think about. All right, Alexa, are you good for like 10 more minutes? Can we hang for 10 more?
I'm great. Whatever you guys want to do.
All right, party on. All right, we've got Lindsay, who is a mega fan. All right, let's see here. All right, Lindsay.
I'm so terrible for having someone be a mega fan. Like, I keep looking at myself and I'm like, oh my gosh, Alexa, get yourself together.
No, I've been binge listening. So
oh, good. I'm so glad.
I'm like constantly listening to you now. So I was actually going to ask kind of like a sleep related question too, because I know that you do talk about like circadian rhythm and that kind of thing a lot. My problem is, like, I don't wake up in the middle of the night like what Janet is saying. I mean, every once in a while that happens. And when it does happen, I always know why. It's like, oh yeah, I was stressing and working on the computer until right before bed. So like, that's not really the problem. And I fall asleep pretty well when I go to bed. But in the morning, I just have like such a hard time waking up. Like, I am exhausted, even if I have gotten like 7.5 hours of sleep. Once I'm up and moving around, I'm fine. It's just like I was talking to Adam earlier today, I'm starting a new job and I'm going to have to get up at like 4:30 instead of 5, which is fine as long as I go to bed in time. But it's just like getting myself to wake up is so hard. And I don't know why, because I'm getting enough sleep.
Yeah. Some people, this is funny. Some people who only need like 6.5 hours of sleep, if they get an hour more, are more exhausted than if they get less sleep.
Really?
So it could be that you actually are getting too much sleep. I say that lightly. Like, for me, I know, like, I do so much better if I get 7.5 hours than if I sleep for 8 hours. Like even that extra half an hour makes it almost impossible for me to get up.
Yeah.
So kind of playing around with how much sleep that you need. I like the 7-hour range. So trying to be consistent, and then consistency is going to matter. So your circadian clock is set. And so being consistent with that is going to make a big difference. So like even on the weekends, if you want to sleep in, sometimes there's like sleep banking where your body does need to sleep in to catch up. But you'll find that on the days that you sleep in, you're actually more sluggish. And a lot of times you'll eat more than the days when you don't have. And it's just because you've thrown off your circadian rhythm enough that all your hormonal cycle for that 24-hour streak is going to be messed up. So even oversleeping 20, 30 minutes can greatly impact your hormonal flow. So being consistent with it. So if you have to start waking up at 4:45 for work, making sure you have 7 hours of sleep to that point, or whatever you find to be your normal. Like I said, I don't really like to see anyone go under 6 hours, even 6.5. And for most adults, I don't like to see them go over 8.5 hours of sleep.
Okay.
Ever. Even, I mean, that's a lot for some people. So trying to find your sweet spot and then being consistent with it for a good solid month, even on the weekends, is going to be critical, and rebooting that. But if you sleep in on the weekends, it's always going to be a challenge to wake up during the week, because your circadian rhythm is basically like, what in the heck is going on? I don't know what to do. And so if you need to sleep in, like if you are tired on the weekends, this is hard, but I always say it's better to go to bed earlier than it is to wake up later.
Yeah.
Because it's the change in the hormonal flow. And some ways to help you, like I know for me, especially in the wintertime, our body's melatonin is going to be in place until light hits our eyes. And so we have to see light. So flipping on a light or getting one of those alarm clocks that's like natural light activated, those can be really helpful. But as soon as you have light on your eyes, it's actually going to reduce the melatonin and kind of spike your cortisol, and it should get your day started off better.
Okay. Yeah,
But
that's definitely, that's good. It's going to be hard for me because like waking up at 4:30 on the weekends.
And even if you
like,
right. So even if you slept till like 6, but like putting a limit on it of like saying like, okay, 6 is the latest I'm going to let myself sleep in. Unless you're like fully exhausted. Occasionally I feel like people do just need this big bout of sleep, but knowing like that day you're probably not going to be super productive.
Right.
But like in order to get into the rhythm of it and to have the energy and the hormones working with you, there has to be a consistency piece, and that can take a few weeks to really get yourself into play.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I will have to start trying to wake up earlier on the weekends and see if that makes a difference.
Yeah. Yeah. I always, I say like people who wake up really early, 6 o'clock tends to be a good point for the weekends. Like if you're waking up before 5:30 during the weekday, you say 6 o'clock, maybe 6:15, 6:30. But what you should find is you actually enjoy waking up at that time.
Yeah.
Because it's going to give you more energy all week long.
Okay. Yeah, that definitely makes sense.
Yeah.
And I kind of just had a follow-up question to Mandy's question also.
Yeah.
I listened to your podcast about the cycle syncing recently.
Mm-hmm.
But then at the end you said like, if you're on birth control, not like, I don't want to say there's no point, but like it's not really going to benefit you that much to do it because birth control screws so many things up.
Yeah.
But would that like about the exercising and stuff, would that still apply even if I'm on birth control?
Yeah, you'll find that probably anytime that a woman is bleeding, essentially that's more work, right? Your body's going into more work to create all the blood cells and the lining and all of that stuff. So technically for everyone during that period, you should probably have more rest and more sleep.
Okay.
But why I say that is, because you're not technically cycling through the phases. Like if you're on birth control, you're not cycling. You're running more base like a male, which is 24 hours. Mm-hmm. So that is more consistent in that. That's why people generally feel better. They don't have the symptoms of hormonal imbalance is because technically we're creating more male-like structure to our hormones and that they're consistent.
Yeah.
But you will find that maybe during those that period of time, you might need a little bit more sleep, but you really don't have to worry about it like a true cycle. Because you're not technically ovulating when you're when you're on birth control, that's how it works, even though you're bleeding. So it's a really hard thing to like grasp, but you're definitely not, your body's not putting in the work that it has in other times. That's why you can be a little bit more consistent with it. And so the exercise component really isn't as big of a deal on birth control.
Okay.
But being aware of it. Yeah.
Like, so how do you, a red flag went off when you said that overtraining is a lot of times a big reason why people don't lose weight, because I mean, that's why I get up so early, because I like to have that like solid hour and a half of exercise in the morning. How do you know if you're overtraining? Like, how do I know what is too much?
I think you know you're overtraining when your body feels inflamed. I don't know if you can tell that. Like, I feel like that's something I had to learn is like, I feel tight all the time. My muscles don't feel like, I feel the stretch every time, you know, like every time you go up the stairs, you feel it. Maybe you're overly hungry, like you're more hungry. Some other things that you can tell that you're overtraining is weight gain is a really big one. Honestly, an hour and a half of working out to me is overtraining. I would probably always say that. Depends what you're doing. But like I said, I worked at a gym. We had 2 days, like we had all these things, but I think it's a really fine line. I like to have people focus more on steps throughout the day. Okay. And if you can't maintain steps throughout the day, like if you feel like, okay, I did an hour and a half of training, now I'm ready to just like sit at my desk or do the things. And I don't really have the energy at the end of the day to go out and do things or go on another walk or something like that. That's probably a sign of overtraining. Like if you exerted all of your energy by noon, you've overtrained. Yeah. So those are things. Weight gain is huge. I don't know how many people I see sign up for like half marathons thinking they're going to lose all this weight and then they gain 10 pounds and they're like, why? And I'm like, yeah, it's overtraining. Like it's an exertion beyond what our bodies are supposed to handle unless it's done really well. And so overtraining to me is if I like to have a 45-minute max. I don't know. That's usually a borderline I give people. And then changes. And if people aren't willing to take a day off of exercise, I think that we're in the mentality of overworking.
Right.
It's not like taking a day off exercise. Like I'm always going for steps, you know, like can just be active. And I think that has more power than just tons of workouts. 7 days a week. It's a hard thing though, because it's against what we've been told.
And I like to run. Like I love to start my morning with a run. Like that just sets my, like, I feel so good. But like I've learned through like mostly listening to podcasts that like going out and running 5 miles is not really good for your body. Yes. So I've cut back on that, but I still like to do at least a couple miles. So that's why I've got to like an hour and a half, because it's like, okay, I want to do some strength training, but then I still like want that run because I like it.
Yeah. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with going out for a run, but 5 miles is extreme. You know, like you're going to push your body into a new phase at that. But can you do a couple mile run and then do the strength training after that, but maybe even shorten down the strength training? But even like, I feel like I like to run for mental reasons because it's more like therapy, but I have to know that run really physically is really not doing much for my body. You know, like in the long term, like it's just really not. It's running in itself is a really ineffective way to see results. But even overtraining, like, I don't know, Adam, you're more of a fitness guy than I am, but like doing a couple days of weights, not 7 days a week of weights.
Right.
I mean, like all these things. And men can handle. This is the problem. Men are so capable of handling stress. It's actually really good for their body. In fact, I see some men who I'm like, you should be more stressed in the right ways. Like you should do more working out to stress your body in healthy ways. But women, we don't handle stress nearly as well as men. And again, for reproduction reasons, of our body can't handle stress in that way because we're meant to carry babies, right? And so we see a lot of workout plans who are designed and created for men. You know, most research is done on men. 95% of all research that's ever been done has been done on a male's body. And I think that we're not taking into account how much a woman's body changes and how we have to be a lot more cautious. And so again, Adam's much better about this stuff, and he would have all the recommendations about how to work out. but just being careful too that overtraining can come in a lot of different ways and look in a lot of different forms. And even if seems like it's easy or healthy for you, it might not be. So like for me, I know I love running, but I know that 7 days a week of running is overtraining for my body. And so even though I like it, what else can I do that makes me feel good? You know, walking is not overtraining in any way or shape or form, in my opinion, for anyone. I think that's just being physically active. It's not taking the toll on your hormones or your stress levels. And so I know for me, 2 days a week, all I do is just go out on a walk. That's it. Like I don't do anything else. And that's only if that second day, you know, like that last day of the week, if I feel like it. Not to be lazy, but to be like, oh man, maybe I up my weights this week in training and my body is just feeling it. Yep. So maybe that's a great day to do foam rolling or to do yoga. Something like that. Like I feel like people will see so much more results in working out the right way than just working out for the sake of getting time in.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And being consistent.
Yeah, maybe I should.
It's like more. It's not well, I'm gonna do this new workout and I did it this week and nothing changed. So I'm gonna switch to some other workout. Like let's put in some time with it and let it settle in and let's get a result out of it. That's important too. Give it some time to work. So cool. All right. I think we've got one more question here from Tracy, from Dr. Tracy. She's got a good one about medical professionals. All right. What do you got, Doc?
Hey, Alexa, I love your podcast as well.
Thank you.
So, okay, nutritionists are always saying doctors suck at nutrition, which is true. We don't learn very much about it. I'll admit it. I'm trying. But what if there was like, what tests do you think that we're not checking? We're not checking the cortisol levels. I mean, what do you think in your opinion? People come in saying they're so fatigued and they can't lose weight, and we check the obvious things, the thyroid and all. But what do you think that we're just lacking?
Yeah. I really like the new DNA testing that's out. This is a little bit more advanced for a lot of people, but I feel like in the past when I've even had blood work done, and this is a hard question because I feel like everyone's going to be a little bit different, but we've created standards based on what we think standards should be for the average population. But I don't feel like we've given room for change over the generations. Like this has been set in stone. And so even when I get my blood work done, I look like I'm half dead because everything is off. Like my white blood cell count is nearly non-existent. And I'm supposed to have 16 forms of cancer and I don't. And so I don't get sick like they think I should. And, I have all these weird things. And so my question every single time is, well, what if this is my normal? Mm-hmm. And so I think that there should be a level of testing in childhood to see trends, because it's not necessarily holding up to what is true for the average number of people, but what's been true for you. Like, I feel like we have to be better about being more consistent with blood work to see trends rather than just doing blood work one time when I'm sick and thinking everything is wrong. So I like the trends, and I just don't feel like we have a good image of any child's blood work that we can then correlate into adulthood, even though, of course, it's going to change as we become an adult. But I think that we can start to see trends in the change of that. But what I like about the genetic testing is that then we can come alongside and say, okay, this is how this body's genetics are lining up. And we can start to see trends in epigenetics, which is really the expression of how the blood work's going to show. So like for me, like I know I have high uric acid levels and that could be linked to all these things. But when I did genetic testing, like, no, I'm one of the 20% of population, maybe 30%, who just doesn't methylate anything well. And so then we can start to see more changes of like, okay, I know that supplements, while good for a lot of people, are probably not the best thing for my body because I can't break them down. Like they're just hard for me. Medications. I'm super sensitive, like all these things. Caffeine is really hard on my body. Technically, I could be considered allergic to alcohol, like all these drugs that so many people can handle. Someone like me, it's extremely damaging. So even when I started like pumping myself full of supplements, I was getting more and more sick. And these are all supposed to be really good things, but come to find out, it's good for a lot of people, but not for me. So I think that the DNA testing can take things to a new level, and we know enough about it to recognize, well, my blood work might mean this. This is how we can pull it together to actually give the requirements. So I really do like the effectiveness of that and how inexpensive it is for what we can get out of it. But then I always love the inflammatory markers. Like if I'm just straight up doing a blood panel on someone, I think even outside of hormone panels, because I think that they're really hard to read because like, while we might be producing enough hormones, our body might not be doing anything with them or not converting them to the active form. So I feel like it's a really poor snapshot. But once we get into inflammation markers, I feel like that's where we see a true representation of what's happening inside of the body. And so I honestly just go for the inflammatory markers if I'm looking at someone's blood work, because I feel like if we have high inflammation, then we can almost always relate that to, okay, that makes sense with your glucose levels or, like doing that. So I don't know. I mean, I think the change in blood work, if you have like someone's blood work now and a year from now, you can see, okay, are we going in the right direction or wrong direction? But just any kind of blood work panel, I've never had great success with. I don't know, speaking for you, you would do this a lot more than I would. But I feel like once I combine the genetic testing with that, then I feel like I started to make sense of the blood work more, of why it is the way that it is. So I do like that. I think it's going to be more common to get more of the genetic scope picture of how we're responding. I don't know what your take is, but I wish that more doctors would test inflammation levels and we would just dive deeper into that on all levels to see all organ systems and how they're responding. Because then, like I said, I think it makes sense of the basic blood work that we're seeing.
Yeah. And it's good because when you do check inflammation, you can see a change. If you fix it, it's objective. You can see there it is. It's your CRP is not high, and So I agree. Okay.
So those are the ones that I do. I mean, I think the liver panels are great too, because I think the liver is just a good scope too of how healthy everything else is working. But I mean, again, a lot of people want to come in and just know their hormone levels, but I mean, there are some deep hormone tests that you could do to see the effectiveness of it. But I think I don't know. In my opinion, I don't do a lot of it.
I don't either. And then they fluctuate too. So it's just that one day and time where you check it. So I don't do a lot of it. I tell people I don't think it's worth the money. I mean, hormone panels just aren't. Cortisol, like if you did cortisol over the scope of a few weeks, you could see if you're not having sleeping trends or whatever. But I think then if you put an inflammation panel with it, then you would see, okay, well, we're just inflamed. Like the stress is just too much for our body. And then kind of the recommendations are all the same. I don't know. I mean, sure.
But I feel like if we want to get very specific, I feel like that layer of the genetic testing, I feel like it's going to be a huge, huge piece of the puzzle. At least it was for me, because I really believe I would have continued to pump myself full of supplements, because via my blood work, I look very malnourished. But then when I when I pump myself full of supplements, then I just realize I'm not breaking down anything, which is making me not absorb anything that I need to absorb. And so it really was making myself sicker. And it was just that simple test that showed me that. But I think we have to have good systems to be able to read it. Like I feel like it's still confusing for 99.9% of the population to read the genetic test. But I mean, I'm happy to hear that you are seeking these options. It's encouraging in the field.
Yeah. Oh, thanks.
Thank
awesome. Yeah, Tracy's awesome. She's another person. A lot of success. She's on her own journey and she leads by example. So that's what we want with our healthcare professionals.
For sure.
All right, guys. Well, I think we'll wrap this one up here. How awesome is it? Like, it's kind of like when I get a gift, I get excited, but when I can give my kids a gift, I get way more excited. So like, I enjoy interviewing cool people like Alexa on a podcast, but be able to connect you guys to Alexa, that is a really big deal for me. And that makes me smile really big, because I know that you guys are into her stuff, and I like to be a bridge, a connector for moments like this. So Alexa, thank you so much for investing some time with us here today.
Thank you guys so much for listening and for supporting me. It means a lot. So I'm so encouraged by you guys. So anytime.
Hey, thank you for hanging out after the episode. I know you enjoyed that one. And there are a couple of quick action steps that you can take if if you want to go a little further and experience things like you experienced live and in person today. So I've got Alexa coming to my studio for our Million Pound Mission live workshop, October 19th. Go to millionpoundmission.com, get those tickets. And then also next Monday, I'll be opening up our membership enrollment for the Transformation ReBoot membership. That's where you can do deep dives like this monthly with experts from my podcast, just like Alexa. I'm sure we'll be having her back in there soon because my community loves them some Alexa. So all that is available, millionpoundmission.com. Head on over there. Enrollment won't open until next Monday, so you have to wait for that, but it'll be open the entire month of October. All right, I appreciate you guys. If you are enjoying the podcasting experience, if you're getting some knowledge and some love from the PhD here, I would love for you to leave a review in iTunes, Apple Podcasts. So wherever you're listening to this, drop a review in there and let me know what you're thinking. And we will be back next week to level things up even more with another great guest. We'll see you then.